Despite all the narrative surrounding his campaign, Donald Trump is making history. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video. Today, it is time to talk about the 2024 presidential election because most of you have probably heard about the theory that Donald Trump has no pathway to the presidency because Nikki Haley is still getting support despite dropping out. And that's what many people, mostly on the right, are saying. And that's their excuse for why Trump has no pathway to the presidency. Well, the New York Times has released a brand new article detailing this exact claim and looking into, is this historically accurate, what people are saying about Nikki Haley's vote share. Now, before we continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Again, folks, all support is greatly appreciated, and yeah. Now, let us get into it because I am getting sick and tired of this claim by the same people. Every single time there's a primary and Trump doesn't get 100% of the vote, these same people every single time claim, well, Trump did not get 100% of the vote despite Nikki Haley dropping out a month ago. That means he has no pathway to the presidency. I'm getting sick and tired of that narrative every time. So let's just get into it. Even after Nikki Haley dropped out of the Republican presidential primary, effectively handing the party's nomination to former President Donald Trump, nearly 20% of Republican primary voters have cast ballots for someone other than Trump. The Pennsylvania primary on Tuesday, where Miss Haley won more than 16%, was just the latest example. These anti-Trump votes have been closely watched, particularly in light of the unusually high number of votes for uncommitted and candidates other than President Biden in this year's Democratic primary. Ballots cast for candidates who have suspended their campaigns are sometimes called zombie voters. I know, that's a very ironic name, but that's what they call it. And this is a big deal. And they bring up the fact that, hey, this isn't the first time this has happened. In fact, this is extremely commonplace, especially at the presidential level. Like, look at this graphic here. All right, just look at this. Since 2000, every single nominee, when everyone else drops out, not including incumbents like Obama, like Trump, or hell, even Biden this year, not including them, this is the zombie vote share, aka voters who vote against the party's nominee despite everyone else dropping out. And look at that. Every single candidate, except for one, at least 20% of their own party vote against them. Take a guess who's the only one below 20%. Donald Trump 2024. He's the only candidate that has less than 20% of his own party voting for someone else despite everyone else dropping out. I mean, the closest anyone has been to Trump in 2024 is Bush and Gore back in 2000. You know, George W. Bush, who was gonna win the nomination no matter what. Yes, I know John McCain was running, but everyone understood that Bush was gonna be the nominee. He was gonna win the nomination just for the simple fact he's a popular governor, but also for his last name. And Al Gore, he was the vice president, the party united behind him even before Iowa. Everyone except a couple left-wing voters were supporting Al Gore. Even in that circumstance, Trump beats them, both of them, by a couple points. I mean, just look at these other examples. Biden in 2020. You want a modern example? There you go. Just 4 years ago, 23% of Democrats, after Sanders dropped out, voted against Biden. Even Trump in 2016, you know, when he won the presidency, 26% of the vote was against him. Hell, Mitt Romney back in 2012, almost 30%. This graphic alone should tell you this theory being pushed by many people that, well, actually, since 20% of Republicans are voting against Trump, he has no pathway, is bullshit. In 2020, Bernie Sanders withdrew from the Democratic primary on April 8th, leaving Biden as the only serious candidate in the race. Still, in the weeks and months that followed, Mr. Sanders received votes. In the Pennsylvania Democratic primary on June 2nd, for example, more than 20% of voters chose someone other than Biden, including 18% who selected Mr. Sanders. I find it very ironic that just one night ago, last night, was the Pennsylvania primary, and everyone was saying Donald Trump has no pathway in Pennsylvania because like 16% of voters voted against him, or whatever it was. Yet Biden back in 2020, despite everyone dropping out 2 months prior, couldn't even crack 80%. Hell, Sanders qualified for delegates. That's how pathetic of a performance it was for Biden. The zombie vote in this year's Republican primary has actually been low by historical standards. In Democratic Republican primaries going back to 2000, roughly a quarter of voters picked a candidate other than the eventual nominee, even after all the other serious contenders had exited the race. Yeah, since 2000. So people can't just say, well, that's only one election. No. In every single year since 2000, it's usually been around 25%. Or actually, it's 23% right here. The median zombie vote. I still like that name. The zombie vote. But either way, only one primary, one, was above the median of 23%. Every other one was lucky to crack 20%, let alone 10%. I mean, how can people look at this graph and say, yes, Trump has a big problem? No, he doesn't. These same people said that DeSantis was going to shock the world in Iowa are now saying, well, this is bad news for Trump because not every Republican's voting for him. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Can you imagine that for a second? These same people, according to them, in any primary, if you get less than like 95% of the vote, or hell, 100%, it doesn't matter what primary it is, if you get less than that, you're in trouble. That's the logic they're using. There are many factors that led to zombie votes. Not all of them indicate a true protest vote from party loyalists against the eventual nominee. One factor is a rise of early voting and mail-in ballots. In Florida, for example, around 1 in 3 Republican voters had mailed their ballots before Miss Haley dropped out on March 6. Which, that explains a lot of the results we've seen. Now, I'm not saying the results last night were because, mail-in ballots, because I think mail-in voting started like the day after or something. But either way, the vast majority of the results we have seen in a state like Iowa, hell, Florida, early voting started before she dropped out. And a bunch of her voters voted early because these people are Democrats, so they're more likely to vote early. However, she has continued winning a decent chunk of votes in states where nearly all voting has occurred after her departure. In the Wisconsin election April 2nd, Miss Haley won 13% of the vote. And there's 2 reasons for that. I did a whole video on that one, but one, the weather sucked, so turnout was pretty bad. But number 2, there was early voting. Granted, it was like right when she dropped out, but you have to assume that at least a couple thousand of her voters voted early before she dropped out. I mean, the election day vote was like 90-10 or like 95-5. It was a blowout. The Trump campaign has argued that some of Miss Haley's support has come from Democrats voting Republican contests. This may explain the zombie vote in, for example, Georgia, where any voter can vote in either presidential primary, and that's a fact. I mean, I think it was the New York Times themselves. They actually did a study, I believe, where they proved that like 20% of voters in the Republican primary in Georgia or something, they either haven't voted in one before, or they voted in the Democrat primary in prior years. Now, does that mean every single one of those voted for Haley? No. But there was like a clear correlation between areas with a magical surge of new voters and, Trump doing worse. In open primary, you can expect that. But the pattern has persisted even in states like Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and New York, where the primaries were open only to registered Republicans. But the problem with that theory is, in a state like New York and Connecticut, you're not getting the hardcore conservative Republican. You just aren't. they're gonna be a bit more liberal. I mean, how can people deny that? It's a fact. Now, granted, these still are Republicans. They're gonna favor Trump more. But these Republicans are not the same as Republicans in Mississippi, where he got like, what, 95% of the vote in? In a state like Pennsylvania, virtually all of Haley's voters came from a county like Chester, a county like Delaware. AKA, these people are still registered Republicans, but in reality, vote Democrat. And plus, people are just forgetting that even before Haley dropped out, Pennsylvania is one of the states that she poured millions of dollars into to try to get people to vote for her. Vote early. Hell, even register as a Republican. Now, does that explain why she got like 15% of the vote? No. But to claim that, well, these voters are just, Republicans are sick of Trump, I don't agree with that. There's probably a couple, like, in Connecticut or something. They've never been Republicans in the first place, but they voted for Haley just to screw with Trump. I can agree with that, maybe. But to claim that every single one of these voters voted for Haley to spite Orange Man, I disagree. This happens every year. I mean, there's just some of these voters, they just like Nikki Haley better. Same thing happened in 2016. A lot of Ted Cruz voters voted for him despite dropping out. Yet they came home to Trump at the end of the day. So how can you look at that and say, well, this time these Haley voters are going to vote for Biden? I wouldn't be shocked, because half of them are just Democrats. But the other half? I don't think so. Hell, there were polls done that proved that many of these Haley voters voted for Biden back in 2020. Either way, this was a fascinating article done by the New York Times that kind of demonstrates what me and others have been saying for months now. This isn't a new phenomenon around Trump that, the Orange Man bad vote is surging in the Republican Party, and therefore Trump's going to lose the election because of it. No. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Trump is making history. He's having some of the best performances with these quote-unquote zombie voters. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.